The Pastor's Heart, and Dominic Steele here, and who is watching your online church and how to pastor them? Adam Lowe is back with us, and how do we express our mission to make and mature disciples with those who are gathering with us online? Now, last March, we all went online by necessity, and then gradually, bit by bit, we've come back to public meetings, some of us faster than others. I mean, here in Australia and New Zealand, we're in front of the curve globally compared to many other places, but everywhere, every church that's been online, we've picked up new people, a new online audience that we didn't have before, and we don't quite know what to do with. Well, Adam Lowe is with us, and Adam is Senior Pastor of St Bart's Toowoomba in regional Queensland, and he's actually done us all a favour by taking a deep dive into what's going on online for their church, and he's going to share his findings with us today. Adam, your pastor's heart, that's what's really got you into caring for these lost people who are tuning into St Bart's, and what's driven you to just investigate what's going on?
Well, as a church, we're really passionate, as I said, about making maturing disciples of Jesus, and the way that we express our life together is also really important. So we talk about gather, grow, give, and serve, and it just so happens that through COVID and through responding through online service, that part of our gathering is online. So we gather online, in person, every week. And so we want to help every single person who connects in the life of our church as in our gathering, whatever way that might be, to really take part in our mission as a church as well. So we want to know them, we want to care for them, we want to see them grow as disciples wherever they may be starting from, that they might really be able to walk and follow Jesus.
Adam, could you just tell us how are you appealing to the online audience to reach out to them during the service?
We're doing a number of things, and of course during the service is important. Before the service we do have email lists, so every week we email whoever's on that list and say this is what's coming up this Sunday with links to resources. During the service we have people who are dedicated to the chat, both on YouTube and Facebook, and they're engaging in the chat. We then collect some of those comments. People say hello, and then during the notices we actually do some shout outs. We've done that ever since we've begun, actually, and we can say welcome to these people. Some are from Toowoomba, some are in hospital, some have been in Sydney, PNG, the UK, wherever, and we'll say hello to a few people. And we do that for two reasons. One, to give a sense of really encouraging those people who are proactively engaging to really say, yeah, you really matter, and we're so thankful that you're with us, you're gathering with us, it just happens that you're gathering online. But also we're doing that to send a bit of a signal to those gathered in person that have an understanding, grow an understanding of our mission as a church is not just those in the room. And so it really does achieve those two purposes, and at one level it can seem a bit simple just doing these shout outs during notices, but it's been really, really effective. And then we've also seen comments afterwards as people watch the service later on the recording, have put comments in as well, and often will engage with each other. So you see the beginnings of online community forming as well as regular people online start interacting with each other too.
You've done some analysis. Your overall attendance levels at St Bart's, give us the big picture of what's happened both pre-COVID and now.
Yeah, it's a great question. So of course, as things have gradually stepped back, it hasn't been a really clear step. It hasn't just been a straight trajectory. There's been different changes along the way, different restrictions come and go. And so we've responded to that. But on the whole, we've seen a gradual stepping back into in-person services. And we can really track that quite carefully. So we've been able to see consistency of online attendance. But then when we've been able to open up and remove some of the restrictions, be that capacity, be that regularity of services, then we've seen a direct link actually between online and in person. So it's really consistent online, and then we've seen that translate back in person. Then over time, of course, as restrictions have eased, we've seen our in-person attendance rise. That looks different for different congregations. We have 3 congregations on a Sunday, and that's for a whole range of reasons. Some to do with capacity, the larger congregations, others because there's a high percentage of vulnerable people in some congregations. But we've seen an increase over time to around 80%. We've also used specific opportunities.
I'm just looking at this graph here, and you've got 78%, 22%, 12%. What do you mean by that? Yeah.
That's right. So it doesn't add up to 100%. But what we've seen is around 78% back in person, which means there's still around 22% of pre-COVID attendance that we haven't seen translate on a Sunday. And that's for a whole range of reasons, we suspect. We think that's partly because actually there's been lower regularity of attendance as people get back into the rhythms or what they're comfortable with in local church life, or depending what's happening in the context. Part of it's because some have chosen to remain online for now, and some because the uncertain conditions have been more wary. And of course, there's also been a small number of people who have left as well, a small percentage. But that makes up to 100%. But then we're also trying to think, well, we're not just trying to get back to what we were pre-COVID. Actually, we've grown in that period. So we estimate there's been around 12%, 14% of growth during COVID of people we're in contact with, people who we'd consider members. And so what our benchmark is not just pre, but pre plus that area of growth as well.
12% is a good number. Talk to me about households and congregations. I'm looking here and seeing, is this your online congregation, 50 households and 75 connections a week? So
yes, that's the online congregation. So every week on a Sunday morning we stream our early services, so 7:30 and 9:30 a.m. I know 7:30 will seem very early for people.
When I saw you've got adults and children turning up to your 7:30 in the morning congregation, I thought, what are they doing in Toowoomba?
That's right. That's Queensland. We have early services. So that's online. So we've seen on average around 75 connections per week across the two congregations. About 2/3 are connecting with 9:30. That's a more contemporary service with a focus on children's ministry as well.
Now, when you say 75 connections here, are you talking about 3-second views on Facebook or something more substantial than that?
No, we're trying to understand what is the number of persistent connections on average per service. So not just 3-second grabs, not just views as people have gone by. And of course, that also doesn't take into account what seems to be quite a reasonable percentage, perhaps above 5%, who are watching or gathering, I guess, in a sense, after the service takes place as well and engaging the service later on. So that's 75 live connections, fairly persistent for the actual service.
Right. Okay. And then I'm looking, those people, where are they from? Local or further afield?
So we really want to understand who's connecting. So who's connecting and why, and how can we best serve them and link them deeper into the life of community and discipleship. And so 50 households responded to the request for a survey. We advertised it over 2 Sundays through social media. We put the emphasis on people who are connecting online. So this wasn't a broader survey for the life of our church. We did one of those last year in the peak of COVID. We invited everyone to engage. But this really was focused on people who were connecting online. And what's fascinating is that as we ask questions about the demographics of where people are connecting from and the reasons why as well, we found that around 50% are connecting from Toowoomba.
Which is your local town, yeah. That's your local town.
That's the town in which we're located. And then around 50% are from beyond Toowoomba. So we are seeing people connect from the greater region, so from the outskirts of Toowoomba and beyond, from Brisbane, from other cities, and even international as well.
Right. And how did people get there?
So we asked people how do they find out about the services, what was the cause for them to connect, and by and large 50% of people were referred by a friend. So 50% referred by a friend, another 21% referred by family members. So we're seeing what is not actually dissimilar to gathering in person, that the most likely reason a person comes along is because someone has invited them. Someone's invited them to connect into the life.
That's actually a very interesting statistic. I mean, where we are, on a prominent corner in Sydney, and where people are Googling our church and that kind of thing, I think we're getting a higher percentage of guests physically from just kind of Google searches or reputation than member invites. That you're getting 75% or 70% from member invite is actually a very strong endorsement of your members' kind of belief in the product, if you like. Yeah.
I think it's really encouraging, and I think we've seen a shift in our culture more broadly as a church from a really welcoming culture to an invitational culture in in recent years, and that just feeds into this. So we've understood as we think about gather, grow, give, serve, well, online is just re-expressing that in a different mode. It's the same shape of community, same of life, same life together.
Now, when you asked people how long they've been involved with you, what kind of, in terms of online engagement, what was the response you got there?
That was amazing, the results that we found, what people fed back. We had thought perhaps there are some people who've been connecting for some time. We've heard some amazing stories of people connecting in for well over 6 months and exploring Christianity. They've linked into other opportunities and next steps in discipleship pathway. But what really surprised us is that when we asked people both how often are they connecting and how long have they been connecting, what we found was that well over 50% of people are connecting every single week, most weeks, every week or most weeks, and 70%, over 70% have been connecting for over 6 months, and another 12%, 3 to 6 months.
Hang on, I'm just going to let that settle. 50 households who've been with you online, half of them for more than 6 months. I mean, that's a church plant.
That's right, 70% for over 6 months.
And their likeliness to continue involvement with you?
Yeah, so the likeliness to continue was 40% said they're extremely likely to continue, and 43% said they are very likely. So over 80% are very or extremely likely to continue connecting with the Barts.
Now, as I've watched you guys online, I think you've been doing better than average online services. But how likely do you think the results that you've been getting are likely to be replicated by other churches across the place?
It's a great question. Well, I think it will depend upon the opportunities that God is opening up and through our people. For us, it's been really significant that people have obviously been invitational. But I think it's also going to be really dependent upon how intentional we are in nurturing those people who are connecting and being really proactive. I think it takes a lot more proactivity and intention than if someone's just coming into our buildings. So they're coming to our buildings, we've already got processes and systems in place that we're probably very familiar with. Some may be better than others. And so what we're trying to think about is how we are really proactive in thinking about the cohorts of people connecting so that we can be proactive in really seeking to nurture them as disciples.
You've done some analysis of those gathering online with you, putting them into different categories and then marking out some potential next steps for them. What are the different categories of people that you've analysed? So
on the whole, we've analysed and thought about who is connecting, and part of this, the reason why we did this is that we weren't really sure, to be honest. We've done some things that connecting with people. It's hard to capture people's names and follow them up. Some people have done forms, some people respond in other ways, but we just really didn't know on the whole. We also needed to address and challenge ourselves because part of us, we're really reluctant to continue to live stream. Our question is what purpose is it serving? How's the shift and fit into the life of our church and our mission? And I have to admit also that part of us we're hesitant because we wonder, are we just enabling people to be comfortable at home and we're missing out on taking our part in the building up of Christ Church together? So we need to be challenged by that, challenged in our thinking. That's part of the reason why. And what we discovered is actually there's 4 cohorts, by and large, connecting regularly with St. Bart's. The first category is broad. We asked people to respond to a whole range of reasons, and they could select multiple reasons, and then we did some analysis of what might be the primary reason for them connecting. And what we discovered is that 62% of people, 62% of those households that have been connecting are what we've categorised as dislocated. So dislocated refers to people who might be physically unable to attend a service, they might be geographically remote or removed, they might have mobility or transport challenges, or they might have as a vulnerable person, therefore they're not yet ready to connect in person. So that's the dislocated group. They can't physically gather with us for whatever reason. The second group of people is what we've categorised as missional. So the missional group are people who are really inquiring about Christianity. They wouldn't yet call themselves Christians and they want to explore Christianity in a safe way, and this is providing a great avenue for them to do that. So around 9.5% of people, primarily, we'd categorise as missional. Some also in that category have said they've been returning to Christianity, and so this has been a safe step for them. So dislocated, missional. The third category is convenience, and this is the category we were tempted really in terms of this cohort to make our decisions on strategically, and we really shouldn't be making our strategic decisions around this. And the convenience group are really those who actually do live nearby. They largely live in Toowoomba, but they found it simpler and more accessible for whatever reason, or they just prefer to attend services online rather than in person. And that was about 19%, that cohort. And then a final cohort, which we hadn't really anticipated, even though it's really obvious, is around 9.5% is what we'd call incidental. So these are people who are not necessarily connecting every single week, but people who join online when perhaps one of the members of their household is sick or they're travelling, and so this creates a way in which they can connect into the regular rhythm of the life of community. And partly when people are travelling, we want to encourage them to connect with the local church actually, but that's not always possible. And it was interesting in the comments that category of people really was so sincere in their appreciation of having that regular access and possibility of connecting into life together as a local church. So they really appreciated that. So dislocated, missional, convenience, and incidental. So they're the broad cohorts, and we're trying to think through them, what are the next steps that we might take with each of those.
Well, let me drill down on each of those with you. And so let's go dislocated first. And what's your next step for, I guess, discovering, connecting, helping them take an invitation next step with you?
So it surprised us, first of all, that we had so many people who fitted into this category, to be honest. And it was particularly surprising we had so many people from outside of Toowoomba. When we conducted our previous survey, around 90% were from Toowoomba and 10% from other places. But here, over 50% are from other places. So that's really quite a dramatic difference between the 2 points in time. And so for those who are dislocated, really the key question is that how do we serve this cohort to connect to local churches near to them? So we've tried to do that in some cases, but where that's not possible, or it's not practical, or there might be other reasons, really we want to say, how do we serve this group as St Bart's members? The vast majority have been connecting for over 6 months regularly. So how do we connect them in, be it online further in Gather, Grow, Give, Serve, or is there opportunities in terms of planting and revitalisation elsewhere as well? And so the next steps for that group is that first we need to discover who they are. So we need to discover who they are and connect with them, which is much harder to do online, takes a lot of repetition and encouragement and really encouraging people to complete some feedback forms. Second is we want to connect with them, connect them with the local church where that's possible, so that's the next step. And the third is that we want to invite them to go deeper into the life of our community. So according to our newcomers pathways that we have established, the shape of our life together that I've mentioned. And so there might be opportunities to connect to small groups. Many of our small groups are meeting hybrid formats continuing. There's opportunities for training centre courses such as the Ridley Certificate that we run. It's running in a hybrid format right now as well. But we're also thinking about what does it look like for newcomers' lunches to also have online newcomers' lunches. We've done the occasional online morning tea, but what would online newcomers' lunches look like? And how do we create opportunities to serve online as well to nurture that online community?
Adam, can I just
So
ask...
that's the first next steps.
Just as you were speaking then, I've realised as I think about anecdotally about our online audience, I'm detecting another group that I haven't heard you reference, and so I just thought I'd ask you about them. And that's somebody who is properly locked into another evangelical church, may or may not be in Sydney, but they tune in, I don't know, while they're washing the dishes on Sunday night, for us as an extra bit of teaching, but they've started to make regular comments on our Facebook feed as it's come out, and so they're starting to feel a little bit relationally connected to us, but really we're not their primary pastoral care. I'm imagining you've got people like that as well. How do they fit into this set of categories of 4 people? Yeah.
the group of people who would fit into that category that you described would actually fit into the convenience and incidental. We know that because some people have discussed that in the comments.
Right.
And we know that around 25% are sometimes connecting, and so that's often reflective of that group.
Right.
Who it's supplementary in a way.
Yeah, well, we'll come to them when we get to the convenience people then. The missional people.
The missional group, which is really amazing, an amazing opportunity. It astounds us that 4 or 5% identify as inquiring, and when we look at a whole range of options, actually around 9.5% of people are inquiring in some form or coming back to Christianity. And we think that number is underrepresented as well, because it's likely that in a household there might be a whole mix of positions along that discipleship pathway, and the person completing the survey is probably least likely to be the inquirer. So we think that's actually an underestimate. And so the key goal for the missional group really is, how do we reach this cohort to take the next step in our discipleship pathway? We talk about inquiring, beginning and growing, and then how do we draw them deeper into the life of local community? So once again, the actions with that group is we want to discover who these people are and connect with them personally. We really want to be intentional about that. We want to pray for them, and we want to invite them to take a next step in the discipleship pathway, and that could be our Introducing Jesus course or Following Jesus course. It could be Alpha Online, it could be the Ridley certificate, or it could be a small group as well, depending upon the person. And we already have people connecting in all of those ways, electronically, digitally, or in a hybrid form as well. And then also, if they're located elsewhere, we want to see how they connect them into local churches as well. So those are the key steps for the missional group.
Okay, and then there's the convenience people, and I suspect for many of us, I think what you're telling me really is that we perhaps were thinking everybody was a convenience person, but there are these other categories, but some of them are convenience people.
That's right. There are some people who would identify reasons for connecting, which we would put in the cohort of convenience. And really, what we want to do is identify who those people are, and we want to encourage them to connect back into the regular rhythms that we know are really healthy in terms of growing as disciples, and connecting into physical gathering as part of sharing in our life together as appropriate for them. We're not going to assume that everyone's in the same position, but really what we want to do is follow up all the church households in the beginning of this year. We're already doing that. We have been doing that. We want to identify opportunities to care for households, for families, for people, whatever their needs and may be. And then we also think it requires launching and communicating the plans for this year really well in order to really engage people and re-engage people, particularly as to why our life together actually matters, and how, as we gather together, as is possible, we are taking our part in the building up of Christ's church and in our mission. That doesn't have to happen only in person, but there's many reasons why healthy community means that we do get to gather, to serve, to encourage one another, and to share in fellowship as well. So that's really the key actions for that cohort.
And then the incidental group. Tell us about, you really just let them go. Is that what happens, or have you got a strategy?
No, we want to think intentionally about this cohort as well. And really what that means is, how do we resource this group to really ensure continuity of connection even when they're sick or away? And really, we were so encouraged by people's comments and the sincerity of those comments. And we think this is something we need to continue to discern and what this means. But first, it means actually we really need to improve and communicate our access to online resources. We do that pretty well, but we want to keep thinking about that in an intentional way around our weekly rhythms and other rhythms. We want to actually ensure that our systems can identify when people are sick or away, particularly for longer periods, in a more proactive way, because we want to know that in case there's the potential for people to shift from incidentally connecting to actually becoming more longer term dislocated. So we want to understand that, because we want to care for them, we want to love them, we want to nurture them. So we really want to be proactive in that. And it's much easier for someone to fall through the cracks because we're not seeing them, and it's easy just to lose track. And finally, we want to encourage people to visit local churches when they travel, as is possible for them, so they can be an encouragement to other communities as well, and also be learning from those communities too.
This is amazing, the research you've done here. The questions, I'm just wondering, would you be prepared to share with us the questions so that we can link to them so that somebody else doesn't need to write their survey from scratch? Would that be possible?
Absolutely, we're happy to share anything that's helpful so that people don't have to reinvent.
Well, we'll put that in the notes below, and so that other people can look at your questions. What about the analysis? How did you go about, once you've got, how many questions were on the survey, and how did you go about analysing them, and how long did it take you to analyse them?
There was only around 10 questions. We tried to keep it really short because we wanted people to be able to complete the survey in less than 5 minutes. So that was the offer to people, the promise that it would take less than 5 minutes. So it's a very short survey.
Did you get them to identify who they were when they filled in the survey?
We gave people the options. So we didn't want to force people and make it compulsory, but we did really want to encourage people as much as possible. And what we actually found is that a very high percentage of people did provide their name. So people provided their name, and the vast majority of people who provided their name are not known to us. So they're not members who we know already.
Mm-hmm. And how much resources, do you anticipate putting into caring for this group of people going forward?
We haven't made a decision, I guess, on exactly how we quantify the amount of resources, but really looking forward and going forward, we are just considering this as part of who we are and what we do. So in the way that we serve anyone in the life of our church, we want to serve the cohort of connecting online as well. So it's less about drilling down and saying how do we resource online, to more say how is this part of our life of church as a whole. And so we have some staff who are working particularly in the area, which is amazing, but we're all trying to think about what does digital mean for all of our ministry and mission.
What other kind of strategic kind of jolts has doing this survey done to your planning? Take us through the staff meeting discussion when you were all sitting around trying to work out, this means we've got to do that.
Probably a whole range of jolts, and we've had some really great discussion about this. For some who perhaps we've been a bit hesitant or apprehensive about what it might mean because it's all new, we don't know what the answers are. We've just been reminded that people connecting, it's not a homogenous group. This is an extraordinary opportunity, but also we need to pace ourselves, that it's still a long-term view. The entire 2021 is going to be getting back, and there's still a lot of uncertainty ahead. So we've got to pace ourselves and be wise. And whatever we want to do, we want to do it with the end in mind to serve our long-term mission and vision. So that's where we're trying to set our eyes on Christ with the vision and mission we think that God is leading us into.
As you've talked about it, 50% of the people are geographically close to you. What are you going to try and do for the people the 50% who are not geographically close to you, apart from say, did you know there was a good church down the road? Do you know?
Yeah, first of all, we really do want to understand who they are, and that's been a lot harder than we thought it would be. This is all new, so we want to understand who they are. When we understand who they are, we want to follow them up and take a personal view. And as they are open to, if they let us know, we've given people the opportunity on this survey and other places to ask for further information. It could be about small groups, it could be about Jesus, it could be about the training centre, about giving, about serving. And so we want to follow up people according to how they've responded. So we want to provide those opportunities. Really, as we speak to people, understand where they're at, that's when we can discern what those next steps might be for them. So it could be connecting them to a local church where we think there would be a great fit and encourage them in that. But also we need to think about what does it look like for a long-term online community, or as we look at church planting as well, how might this inform where we prioritise planting as well.
I think you were telling me on the phone last week that a number of the people who have come up in this survey are part of regional country towns in Australia where there is no serious evangelical witness. Was that right? Have I remembered right?
That's correct. There are people connecting from quite remote and regional places, and they've been so appreciative. So,
And if that's the case, they could be long-term members of your church. Digitally, yeah.
absolutely, and they're members. So we want to really think about then what does it look like for those people to engage in what we would talk about as our newcomers pathway. So people coming along to newcomers lunches, but could be online. It might be a different type of event, of people actually having opportunities to serve. We've got small groups that are continuing to meet in hybrid. So actually, we've already have lots of platforms and modes for people to connect in the life of our church already. And so it's about understanding where they're at and actually providing those opportunities really proactively.
Adam, thanks very much for sharing with us today.
Thanks, Dominic.
Adam Lowe has been my guest on The Pastor's Heart. He's the Senior Minister of St Bart's Toowoomba in regional Queensland, and are really helpful to get us thinking in that space. This is Dominic Steele. Thanks for joining us on The Pastor's Heart, and we'll look forward to your company next week.